Well, a very good afternoon to you. Many thanks for making time to join us here on KBC Channel 1 Lunchtime News. We are bringing you the latest updates from the stories making headlines here within the country and beyond. My name is Betty Kiptum. My colleague on the sign language interpretation is Byron Abuli. Welcome to the bulletin. Now we start off with matters COVID-19. Of course, the pandemic continues and the county's COVID-19 update is currently ongoing. Health Cabinet Secretary Mutahi Kagwe is speaking in Kajiado County. Let's listen into that.
Kuwaeleza, kuwasomesha, kuwafunza vile mambo inaenda na vile wanaweza kujikinga kwa hii virusi. Kwa hivyo jameni, ile kazi mingi sasa iko na nyinyi. Hata sio daktari. Daktari anaenda kuona mtu ambaye ashaumbukizwa. Nyinyi ndio mneko na ile kazi kubwa ya kuzungumza na watu huko katika vijiji. And I want to thank you because you have continued to be extremely supportive, extremely effective. Hata mimi naungana mkono na wale watu wanamwambia CS Matiang'i aangalie hali yenu. Hata mimi niko na hao watu. Na wajua hapa mna watu ambao mnajua we are lucky today here because we have got very active people. Huyu mnaona hapa environment minister. Mmewahi kusikia environment minister ambayo amefanya kazi vile huyu anafanya? Afforestation, reforestation, mambo yote. Yule mtu nakumbuka tu alikuwa anafanya kazi namna hiyo, ni mzee wa kule Murang'a. Anaitwa John Michuki. Sasa huyu ndio sasa amefuata hiyo. And we want to congratulate you. We want to congratulate you, Waziri, for the work that you have continued to do. Kwa hivyo mimi sitaki kuongeza mambo mengi sana kwa sababu leo ni siku ya CS Matiang'i ambaye pia ni chairman wetu. Kama Waziri Tobiko alivyosema, yeye ndio anakuwa chairman wetu katika NDICC. Na vile vile nataka kusema vile Tobiko amesema, yeye sio chairman kwa makosa. Yeye ni chairman kwa sababu anaweza. Kwani unaweza patiwa kazi kama uwezi? Wajua leo hii ameniamsha asubuhi akasema mimi kama chairman nasema upe juje hapa Kajiado usunguze na machiefs waambie vile mtafanya kazi na wao machiefs. Kama ingekuwa jamaa mwingine mimi singekuja. Lakini sasa chairman akisema wewe ni nani useme ingine? Si unaenda mara moja. Kwa hivyo sisi tunafurahia ile uongozi ambao CS Matiang'i anatuongoza vizuri, na ndio kazi unaona ikiendelea sana na ikiendelea vizuri sana katika hii serikali ya President Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta. Na hivyo ndio tutaendelea kwa sababu ile miradi ambayo rais ameanza, mabarabara, mahospitali, nini, sisi tukitaka kuendelea na hiyo miradi hiyo. Na kwa sababu amepatiwa hiyo uwezo wa kutuongoza, tutamfuata yeye na ndio afanye hata yeye apate kufanya kazi ambayo wananchi wanaiona na wananchi wanafuata. Kwa hivyo mimi wacha niache kuongeza mengi sana. Niongeze tu niseme jameni, let's not behave normally. If you treat this disease normally, iko haja ya mimi kumaliza hiyo sentence? Si nyinyi mnaelezwa yote? Kwa hivyo mimi nitakuja hapa in the next few days. Tumekubaliana na Governor Olenko. Nitakuja hapa tuende hali ya hospitali kutoka ile ya World Bank pale Gong na zile zingine ambazo anataka tuziinue. Tutafanya kazi na yeye katika hiyo hali ya kutengeneza.
That is the Health Cabinet Secretary Mutahi Kagwe there, just giving that briefing in Kajiado County. He is with his Interior Ministry counterpart, that is Fred Matiang'i, and he has called on the local leaders to ensure that they sensitize the locals on the dangers of COVID and really how to stay safe from the pandemic. From matters COVID, we now move to political matters where ODM leaders are having a press briefing there. Let's listen into what they have to say.
Deserve and which they pay for. The party enjoys public goodwill because it has always stood against corruption. This is the position we underscore in Obado's case. We believe the case presented before court is serious enough to warrant the governor's removal from office. Only a leader who has lost all honor and respect for constituents and who has no conscience would want to continue in office with such shameful charges against him. We are aware that the governor is trying to convene a cabinet meeting at his home tomorrow, which means he's determined to hang on to office and continue undermining his deputy who should be taking over the management of the county under the circumstances. In fact, Obado's interpretation of the conditions of the bail is that the office simply means the physical building. That is further from the truth. Nothing can be further from the truth. As a matter of fact, the office means discharging your functions as an officer or a public officer. Let me just ask you an example. Ask you this question. It's a rhetoric one. If the office just means the physical space and Obado is allowed, because the reason why he's barred from accessing the office is so that it does not interfere with evidence. Now, if he
That is Orange Democratic Movement's John Mbadi. They are just giving the party stand on that impeachment motion against Migori Governor Okoth Obado. Our reporter Suleiman Yeri will be bringing us the latest on that. We now move to matters COVID-19. Misappropriation of funds grilling is going on at the at the National Assembly. The Health Committee is grilling the suspended KEMSA officials. Let's listen into that.
Kichwa mwafaka. Kichwa hapa inamaanisha kwamba umesoma.
Approve the over expenditure. Indeed, that issue did not come to the board until much later. I think in August of this year, when the management brought to the issue of having surpassed the budget by 7.6 billion shillings. I think it's also important to note here, Madam Chair, in the committee, that these COVID procurements were done between mid-March, mainly in March, April, and May, a very short period of time, Madam Chair, when the commitment letters were issued and when the commodities were delivered to KEMSA warehouses, where I confirmed those commodities still are the ones that have not moved. A lot of them, of course, have moved, but 6.2 billion shillings, as of the last time I was here, is the amount of money that is still there. So in taking responsibility, I want to state that the board did not approve of that over expenditure, and that has been confirmed. Then the same honorable member of parliament asked, because he's talked about suspicion, he asked, why did we suspend the CEO and why is the board still there? Now, I did produce as one of the annexes the letter dated 13th of August from the EACC, the letter from the EACC to myself, copied to the CS and to Dr. Kenyua, and also to the PS, Susan Mochache. Madam Chair, this investigation.
Day school fees. This 73 million. We assure ODM MCS who have signed the petition to intimidate and blackmail them. And I think he now even
Well, those are KEMSA officials just being grilled there by the Health Committee in the National Assembly. We now move to matters revenue allocation, and that stalemate continues. Now, Senate's majority leader wants to just give an address on those issues. Let's listen into what Irungu Kangata has to say.
County Allocation of Revenue Act approved by Parliament for the purposes of meeting expenditure of the county governments for the financial year. So meaning, as per that law, 50% of the monies owing to the counties as per last financial year approved budgets should have been released to the counties to be able to pay their employees, to be able to meet their recurrent expenditure and other key expenditure items. And therefore, anyone saying that this stalemate is the one causing workers not to be paid is not true. We do have a legal mechanism allowing for that. We had a meeting that was held before the office, virtually, the office of the Cabinet Secretary of Finance, that is Honorable C.S. Yatani. Senate leadership attended, governors attended, and it was resolved, indeed, 50% of monies owing to the counties should be released to the counties, and therefore let everyone know that Senate is not the cause for the cash crunch. We have sufficient laws that would enable Treasury to release monies to the counties. I also want to draw the attention of the country to Supreme Court advisory in a case that was filed by the CUG on matters of division of revenue. Again, that issue was canvassed, and it was agreed that no lacuna exists in law, and therefore there should be no outcry based on this stalemate. People should be paid their salaries, workers should be enjoying their monies, and therefore no one should be blaming Senate for the current problem we're having in the counties. Thank you.
But using which formula, the 50% that they should be given?
The formula that should be applicable is the last year's formula. In fact, the law talks about the last year's basis that was used to allocate money in last financial year. It is be the one that should be applying now, pending the passage of County Allocation Revenue Act for this financial year. But once we pass it, then we shall have terminated that arrangement.
Okay, and we have reports indicating that the 12-member committee was not able to reach a decision on what formula should apply. So what happens, because that stalemate is still...
Is the Senate Majority Whip Irungu Kangata there just giving his views on matters, the revenue allocation stalemate that is going on. Remember that Senate met over 10 times to discuss that revenue allocation formula and yet to reach an agreement. Now, he says that workers in the counties should continue being paid, that there is no laguna in the law that will just be a reason for counties not to pay their employees. That is the latest on matters the revenue allocation. We will be bringing you more news after this short break. Do stay with us.
Next on
Nitakuona vipi ewe mtumwa wangu.
Tauba. Na tauba hii inamaanisha kutubu madhambi yako kwa Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala kwa ukweli. Ya pili ikiwa ni almuhasaba, yani kujihesabu nafsi yako, matendo yako yamekufikishia wapi na thawabu zako pia zimekufikisha wapi. Ya tatu ikiwa ni almuraqaba, kufahamu kuwa Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala anakuona hata kama humuoni. Na ya mwisho ni almujahada, kujitahidi katika
Tonight on KBC Channel 1.
She can't remember anything. She's lost her memory. She didn't even know who I was.
She was in a coma. Let's give her time. Donna was kind enough to tell me who's who in my family. I'm sorry.
Hakuna kitu anakumbuka?
Memory yake na kanike ilidilitio.
Ulijaribu kumkumbusha?
Nimetry but madokio anadai ati lazima nimkumbushe pole pole.
The Double Champions who boasted of a star-studded squad that could not stop the debutants from going down in the history books of the FIFA World Cup finals.
And that was what enabled Pat Bouba Diop to write his name into legend, into history for Senegal. It is France, the world champions, 0.
It is down memory lane with the Lions of Teranga, Senegal, as they mold Les Blues of France in the 2002 edition to reach the quarter-finals. Save the date this Saturday at 5 p.m. on KBC Channel 1, Soca Finest. This weekend on KBC Channel 1.
Why are you walking like that? Like what? Let me tell you, no one cares who you are or what you are wearing or where you slept last night.
What do you think you're doing?
You know, I wish I could say yes, Senorita, my love, but you know, just make this moment memorable.
Oh my God. How about this for a memory? Back off. I said we are done. I meant it then, and I mean it now, Sisha.
Maybe she has become a witch doctor.
Oh, that's very dangerous. Oh, clean this area. Cleanse this room. Oh, you little rat, where the hell did you put my stock? Where the hell did you put my stock?
What? I don't know what you're talking about. You took the stock last week.
Kinyanjui, do not test my face. Now look at how much you cost me.
Welcome back. You are watching Channel 1 Lunchtime News. Now, Kenya is yet to establish the whereabouts of 21 packages that went missing from the donation by Chinese business magnate Jack Ma to help the country in the fight against the coronavirus pandemic. The Ministry of Transport, which cleared the consignment donated through the Africa Center for Disease Control in Ethiopia, says they realized part of the goods were missing, and notified the Ministry of Health of the anomaly. The Chief Administrative Secretary in the Ministry of Infrastructure, Chris Obure, while appearing before the National Assembly's Health Committee, says it is now upon the Ministry of Health to follow up with the Ethiopian administration to trace the whereabouts of the donations.
To this committee that apart from the government clearing agency, you do not procure or you do not use any private firm to clear these goods.
Not aware of any attempt by any individual or group of individuals to try and divert this consignment to any other destination. Of course, the consignment was, as you can see, for Kemri or the Minister of Health, and that's where those were the people who received this consignment. And in all cases, the consignment was transported to KEMSA stores using KEMSA-owned vehicles or KEMSA-branded vehicles.
Now, President Uhuru Kenyatta has assured the global community that Kenya will lead Eastern Africa counter-terrorism efforts by working with regional governments and partners. The president said COVID-19 had heightened potential for terrorist acts, worsened the refugee crisis, and led to the proliferation of small arms and light weapons.
The head of state spoke Wednesday evening at State House, Nairobi, during a virtual meeting of a Kaaba process on COVID-19 convened by King Abdullah II of Jordan. The meeting brought together several global leaders, among them Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, President Rodrigo Duterte of Philippines, and UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres to discuss the nexus between the COVID-19 pandemic and global security. President Kenyatta said COVID-19 is a catalyst to global insecurity by amplifying pre-existing security and contributing socio-economic difficulties.
The pandemic has been a catalyst for underlying risk trends, with many countries facing sharply deteriorating political, security, criminal, and governance situations.
President Kenyatta said the pandemic had slowed down global and regional crisis and conflict resolution efforts, thereby escalating tension and negating peace-building gains made over the years.
The pandemic, coupled with the globalization of terrorism and violent extremism, has posed an even greater threat to international peace and security. Several countries continue to experience protracted armed conflict, including from activities by non-state armed groups, as well as a marked humanitarian crisis, often with a significant trans-border and global dimension, as well as facing the ever-present threats of terrorism.
To address security challenges made worse by COVID-19, President Kenyatta said frontline states in the fight against terrorism and violent extremism should be assisted by strengthening their capacities to deal with both emerging and pre-existing security challenges.
Your Excellencies, the push for technical assistance, capacity building and enhanced coordination to strengthen global counterterrorism capacities, including through the Counterterrorism Committee, the Office of Counterterrorism, and other UN entities, the African Union, regional economic communities, and other mechanisms are key to building appropriate and harmonized actions.
Canadian Prime Minister Trudeau called for the involvement of women in the global security conversation so as to ensure that diverse voices are heard. Suleiman Yeri, Channel 1 News.
And the Council of Governors says a total of 32 counties have now complied with an agreement of setting up the 300 isolation beds as part of measures to prevent further spread of the novel coronavirus within communities. According to the COG, the remaining 15 counties are working towards achieving the same.
While issuing a progress report on the state of preparedness among counties, the Council of Governors reported that only 15 counties were yet to attain the 300 isolation bed capacity requirement, while 32 had passed the mark. COG Chairperson Wycliffe Oparanya noted that there are about 1,110 patients in these facilities and 1,741 people confined in public quarantine facilities have been released. The Kakamega governor said cumulatively in 46 counties, 25,023 tests have been carried out, of which 167 health workers tested positive and they are all receiving treatment. So far, 4,774 healthcare workers have been trained. Additionally, 6,454 community health volunteers have been trained and sensitized on the management and response of COVID-19. Meanwhile, the Council of Governors urges Kenyans to continue to comply with the coronavirus preventive measures issued by the government. Elsewhere, the Senate Ad Hoc Committee has ordered Mombasa County government to submit its financial budget expenditure on COVID-19 without fail. The committee is accusing the county administration of failure to account for millions spent on COVID-19 disease response.
Health, how we are affected, but even though some of us saw some silver lining and see how best we can capitalize and optimize on opportunities going forward into the future, there are serious socio-economic issues.
Appearing before the committee, the county finance executive, Mariam Maruk, said all funds were spent as stipulated. Purity Museo, Channel 1 News.
To Samburu County now, an initiative by the National Police Service to equip police officers with skills on how to effectively deal with psychological trauma continues to gear up. The program, currently sensitizing officers in Samburu County, has so far reached the men in uniform in 31 counties and is said to have managed to identify and attend to officers with emotional breakdown.
The group of officers in Samburu County is the latest batch of men in uniform across the country to undergo the sensitization program, an initiative that the National Police Service has brought on board peer counselors to help police officers manage stress to enhance service delivery. Officer in charge of Counseling and Chaplaincy Directorate at the National Police Service, William Sifuna, says officers harbor trauma that leads to emotional breakdown.
Dealing with issues of helping officers who are abusing alcohol and even those who are smoking. Several of them have changed, and some are still in the rehabs and some are yet to be taken for treatment.
The COVID-19 pandemic even worsening the situation.
highlight issues that are affecting, even to spoil the name of the service, so that we see specifically what is happening within our officers, that they are now messing up and then maybe misusing the firearms, using the powers. Now the judiciary is looking forward to reduce the number of cases in courts. So what we are doing also, there are some minor and small cases whereby the officers can also take initiative.
The program also seeks to establish a healthy working relationship between the police officers and members of the public.
To deal with so many issues from the public, so many complaints, so many disagreements in the society, and that is why we are really bringing them on board, so that with the right skills, with the right training, they are able to deal with these issues in a professional way.
So far, officers in 31 counties across the country have been engaged. Kamchi Menza for Channel 1 News.
Police are holding a 70-year-old woman who was arrested with bang valued at 500,000 shillings. The narcotics was stashed in 2 bags concealed as second-hand clothes and was being transported to Nairobi.
Police officers attached to Mulolongo Police Station, Machakos County, have nabbed bang estimated at 500,000 shillings and arrested a 70-year-old woman. The 500 rolls of bang that were hidden in 2 bags were being ferried in a public service vehicle at Mulolongo town. Mulolongo Police Station officers, led by their boss Jaquim Kangangi, pounced on suspect immediately she alighted from public service vehicle. Preliminary investigations established that the bang was destined for Mulolongo Township and had originated from Busia County. Athi River Sub-County Police Commander Catherine Ringera says detectives have been following links of elderly and youthful women being used as major peddlers of bang and other hard drugs. She said notorious drug peddlers have been targeting teenagers who are now at home after the school calendar was interrupted by the COVID-19 pandemic.
To matters gender-based violence now, reports are emerging of an increased number of male victims of gender-based violence in Baringo South. Community policing groups such as Nyumba Kumi Initiative are concerned the rising cases will result in broken homes or dysfunctional families, with children being greatly affected.
It is said that even men cry. In the case of Marigat, a significant number are crying, but silently. They are victims of domestic violence. They are victims of domestic violence. Sadly, many men in this position are afraid to speak for fear of ridicule. At Kampi Turkana, we meet Ramadan Mohammed. He says his life has been hard since the coronavirus pandemic.
Mi nimeenda kuwatafutia, nimekosa. Nikirudi nyumbani nakuta ile kitu ambayo nilikuwa nafikiria kama sufuria pia siku hizo wanauza.
Na ukiona ya kupikana hiyo, this COVID-19 imeleta shida. Hasa kwa familia kwa sana. Ni changamoto mingi sana, hali ya njaa. Watoto hakuna shule. Na majukumu mingi imekuwa ngumu kwa maisha.
According to Samuel Leku, a Nyumba Kumi elder, about 3 cases of gender-based violence are reported daily in Baringo South.
Mara nyingi unapata ni mambo ya mzee aleti chakula, o mama ameenda kulewa, hajapikia watoto. Sasa kesi imekuwa nyingi sana. Na tumejaribu ile tunajaribu kuwakalisha chini na kuwaongelesha.
In a bid to sensitize the community and encourage peaceful conflict resolution, Lois Muge, Director Baringo Rehabilitation Program, has been offering free counseling to victims of gender-based violence.
And due to this COVID-19, again, we have realized that the people in our county have become so idle that they have engaged into so much alcoholism. They have also engaged into other things, and some of them have led to depression. Some have committed suicide.
During the COVID-19 pandemic, she has also been donating foodstuffs to residents who attend the counseling sessions. Ruth Wamboi for Lunchtime News.
The northeastern region have been urged to join the Kazi Mtaani program for Self-Sustenance. Northeastern Regional Commissioner Nicodemus Ndalana said the government introduced the program to help youth who lost livelihood due to the effects of COVID-19 pandemic to have something for a living.
With cases of youths in Mandera crossing the border to join Al-Shabaab terror group rife in the area, Northeastern Regional Commissioner has vowed to prevent the vice by engaging more youths in the Kazi Mtaani program.
Wengine wamekuwa recruited kwa Al-Shabaab because wanatafuta hiyo. Hii ni moja wa kushikilia vijana wetu wasikose kazi, wawe na kitu wa kufanya. Wengi ambao wanaenda upande ule mwingine wanaenda kwa sababu hawana kitu cha kufanya. Ukiwa engage, ukiwaeka mahali pamoja, hawataenda. Watajifikiria wa Kenya na watajua wanafikiriwa kama wa Kenya wale wengine.
Ndalana, who was inspecting the ongoing program, said majority of young people in the region are now engaged in the program, making them preoccupied and hence the reduction of drug and substance abuse.
Muradi unatumika kama CV hii. Unajua CV part of it ni radicalization. Kwa hivyo ni part ya kujenga vijana, kuengage vijana. Nikasema wangekuwa wako kwa bangi.
Elsewhere, Embu County Commissioner Abdullahi Galgalo has lauded the government for the Kazi Mtaani program, saying many youths have been engaged and hence curbing insecurity.
Ya mahali ambapo maji yamekwama hayapiti kwa makalvati wameyafungua, shule zetu wamezisafisha wakati watoto wako nyumbani, na mambo mengi wamefanya, na wao pia wamesaidika kwa sababu wamekuwa occupied, uhalifu umepungua, town yetu imesafika, na vijana kama mnavyoona wamekuwa occupied kabisa kwa kufanya kazi mzuri.
He said in Embu over 3,000 youths from 11 informal settlement schemes are now engaged in the program, the commissioner urging leaders to avoid politicizing the program.
Natoa mwito kwa viongozi wasipinge kitu for the sake of it. Na kuna wale wanasema pengine pesa za kazi mtaani inaweza kuliwa. Hii pesa huwezi thubutu kula kwa sababu hizi pesa hakuna DO, hakuna chief, hakuna assistant chief, hakuna county commissioner ambaye ataona ndururu. Pesa zinalipwa direct kwa vijana hawa kupitia M-Pesa, na hiyo kazi inafanywa na Safaricom.
Suleiman Yeri, Channel 1 News.
Now, the Health Ministry is giving the COVID-19 update that is happening today in Homa Bay County. Our reporter Achola Simon is on the ground. Let's listen in to Achola. What's the latest on that COVID-19 update?
Well, thank you very much, Betty Kiptum. As my colleague can just show the other side, you can actually see the CAS in the Ministry of Health, Dr. Rashid Aman, actually having a brief session with the leadership of Nyagoro Health Center. This is one of the isolation centers in Homa Bay County, and he's been touring a number of isolation centers in this county just to check on the preparedness of this county to combat COVID-19, and he will be doing that the rest of the day, and then of course thereafter we are expecting that at around 1:30 or 2 thereabout he will be giving the daily statistics. Now, Betty, this county has already recorded 34 cases of COVID-19, and there's been an effort put in place by the county government just to ensure that indeed they are in a good position in terms of combating COVID-19. And of course, as I've already said, there are a number of isolation centers that have actually been put in place, and in total we are told that we have about 16 isolation centers in this county that have actually been put in place. And we are also aware that the Homa Bay County Referral and Teaching Hospital has actually also put in place the ICU facilities and of course every other facilities that are actually needed to combat COVID-19. So the CAS of in the Ministry of Health, Dr. Rashid Aman, has actually been moving around the county from the having a brief session with the leadership of the county of Homa Bay. He then went to Malela, and then there of course he's come here at Nyagoro Health Center, and of course key business being that of assessing the preparedness of the county in terms of combating COVID-19. So, Betty, we will be keeping a keen eye on what he will be doing in this county, and more so the brief that he is expected to release at around 2 p.m. this afternoon. One key other thing that he's actually done in the morning, he did meet up the leadership of this county, that is the governor of Homa Bay County, Cyprian Witi, and then of course he did also launch a program that will be targeting malaria. Now the Homa Bay County and of course Migori County have been identified as one of the possible pandemic areas for malaria, and the government within it is means to ensure that they do research so that then they can actually combat the vagaries of the pandemic as and when it appears. Remember, malaria has been in this part of the world for quite some time, and of course there are a number of measures that have actually been put in place to combat malaria. But of course, every other year something else keep coming up, and Homa Bay and Migori County, as I've said, has been identified as possible pandemic areas, and the government is actually doing everything within its means to ensure that they come up with sound measures that will combat malaria in this region. Back to you, Betty Kiptum. Probably we meet at around 2 p.m. when the CAS in the Ministry of Health, Dr. Rashid Aman, will be giving an update of COVID-19 statistics in the country.
Thank you very much, Simon Achola, there, a reporter from that Nyanza region. Is in Homa Bay County, where that COVID-19 update will be given by the Chief Administrative Secretary in the Health Ministry, Dr. Rashid Aman. That will be happening in a few minutes. But he has said that around 34 cases have already been confirmed in Homa Bay County alone. Of course, those health officials will be going through the facilities in that county to ensure that they are ready to combat any upsurge, if any. Well, we move now from Homa Bay County to Kisii, where the incoming Kisii County Commissioner Abdi Rizak Jaldesa has vowed to intensify public sensitization sessions on the coronavirus in a bid to flatten the curve. The administrator attributed the upsurge of the deadly virus to lax in adherence to the existing containment measures.
Speaking when he called on area Governor James Ongwae, Jaldesa urged area residents not to relent in their efforts of observing COVID-19 protocols, as he expressed concern over rise in COVID-19 cases. Speaking when he called on area Governor James Ongwae, Jaldesa urged area residents not to relent in their efforts of observing COVID-19 protocols. He expressed concern over rise in COVID-19 cases at his former Uasin Gishu County workstation, attributing it to laxity in adherence to the existing containment measures.
We'll continue with sensitization of the people to ensure that those protocols, the health protocols, are adhered to in terms of prevention. Because after Nairobi and the lockdown issues were open, I think people are a bit relaxed in certain areas, and I believe we need to continuously tell people, as we look forward to issues of school reopening, probably colleges reopening, and things returning to normal.
The CC was responding to welcoming remarks from the governor, who had lamented over increasing cases of COVID-19 in the county after partial reopening of the economy. The new Kisii County Commissioner at the same time commended the ongoing Kazi Mtaani program, in which over 3,900 youths were engaged in, saying it will help improve environmental hygiene besides productively preoccupying them.
The essence of Kazi Mtaani is for these young people to be engaged also, but at the same time, have something in their own pockets, because these are some of the people who are working, hand to mouth, but because of the COVID-19, some of these businesses actually collapsed or something like that.
Ongwae assured residents of prevailing cooperation with the national government, which had promised to allow the county host an open National Day event after the coronavirus pandemic subsided.
The national celebrations were going to be here, but they were not here because of COVID. I have already received a letter from the presidency that the next celebrations are open celebrations are going to be held in Kisii.
This year's Madaraka Day celebrations planned to be held in the county aborted owing to the spike of the disease. Timothy Kipnusu for Channel 1 News.
Let's do business now. Kenya's business and economic environment continues to deteriorate, with private sector activity worsening last month. The Purchasing Managers Index fell to 53.0 from 54.2 in July as new orders slowed and companies continued to shed jobs. This comes even as the quarterly data from the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics reported a steep rise in unemployment, with more than 1.5 million people losing their jobs between April and end of June this year.
5 months since Kenya reported its first case of COVID-19, the economy continues to bear the brunt of these shocks. Economic growth is expected to dip to record lows, while job losses are rampant. Piecemeal economic bailouts have not shielded the economy from the full impact of the pandemic. Business sentiments have worsened after the government closed the Kenyan airspace and restricted inter-county movements to curb the spread of the virus. The Stanbic Bank Purchasing Managers Index for the month of August worsened to 53 points from 54.2 in July after companies were hit with low orders or new orders at all. The survey shows companies were on a job-slashing spree after new orders dried up and consumer purchasing power weakened in the month. In the previous month of July, business activity was stoked by easing of movement restrictions that had been in place to curb the spread of COVID-19. Head of Africa Research at Stanbic Bank, Jibrani Quireshi, notes the employment subcomponent index still remains below the 50 level, largely reflecting firms scaling back on wage costs. Job losses continue to be widespread in the country, with 1.6 million people losing their jobs in the quarter between April and July, according to data from the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics. The annual inflation rate in Kenya stood at a 10-month low of 4.36% in August of 2020, unchanged from July of the same year. O'Brien came in for lunchtime, Business News.
Now, with a growing urban population putting pressure on land use, urban farming has been backed to help narrow the food insecurity gap. In Nakuru County, a group of university students have ventured into urban farming and are also involved in training of other urban residents to engage in farming. In less than 6 months, they are reaping the benefits. The Ministry of Agriculture indicates that 25% of urban dwellers engage in farming, producing a variety of crops and livestock. 72% of these grow vegetables, followed closely by poultry keeping at 66%. In Nakuru County, 10 university students are training residents on growing food crops in tiny spaces and off the ground. They came together when learning institutions were closed in March this year following the outbreak of COVID-19 and formed Caldera Youth Group, which is promoting adoption of storied conical-shaped vegetable gardens.
We discovered that the storied garden is quite efficient when it comes to saving on space. That is, the storied garden occupies 21 square feet. In the same space, you're going to plant 16 vegetables or stems if you are to plant on the ground. But with a storied garden, we use 130 stems in one storied garden.
The storied gardens, they say, can be placed even on staircases, verandas and balconies.
So I would encourage even those parents who have maybe a 50 by 100, even a quarter. You can start up something like this and you will get more profit from it.
The group started off with 2 storied farms and now have 50. On these gardens, a farmer can grow 130 stems of vegetables as opposed to 16 stems one can grow using conventional ground farming methods. Experts say because of limited space in urban centers, the gardens offer long-term solutions to food shortages.
So story gardening is a sustainable way of creating food security for households, because when you have each household put up 2-story gardens, that is enough for them to supply their family with enough vegetables for a very long time.
He, however, notes that while more people use urban gardens to produce food, it should be improved to cater for agroforestry. Betty Kiptum, Channel 1 Business. The Kenya Bureau of Standards has seized 993 bags of expired rice during market surveillance activities in Ortum, West Pokot County. KEB's Managing Director Bernard Njiraini says the seized goods would be destroyed at the expense of the owners, in addition to other legal actions. Here are the details of these and other stories in our corporate briefs.
The Kenya Bureau of Standards says the intercepted expired rice worth 23 million shillings, branded KPL and Orient Thai, was packed in 25-kilogram bags. KEB's Managing Director Bernard Njiraini attributes the success in nabbing the contraband to assistance from National Police Service officers. He says repackaging of expired food products is a serious malpractice that puts the health of consumers in grave danger. In a statement, Njiraini said the seized product will be destroyed at the expense of the owners, in addition to any other legal action as provided by the law. Meanwhile, Microsoft will train over 2,300 Kenyan students this month in an effort to build capacity and prepare them for the world to work after college. According to the World Economic Forum, there is a skill gap in Africa, with employers identifying an inadequate skilled workforce as a restriction to business growth, including 41% of all firms in Tanzania, 30% in Kenya, 9% in South Africa, and 6% in Nigeria. To address this, Microsoft, through the For Africa initiative, has trained and certified graduates and interns from the Ministry of ICT, 3 of Kenya's top coding schools, Moringa, Modcom, and Codel. Since the launch, more than 800 Kenyan students have been trained. Finally, Larson Group has unveiled a personal pension fund that seeks to offer the next generation of retirement income solutions. Larson Group Head of Pension Michael Mitao says while focus has been on accumulation of wealth, it is now time to shift the focus to those entering the decumulation phase of their life.
What we are trying to do here is to emphasize to the consumer a simple thought. You can self-service. You do not need to follow many routes and channels for you to get your pensions up and running. You can do this at the ease and convenience of wherever you are, and you can make flexible payments of any amounts, even as little as 50 shillings. As frequently as you want.
The labor force at the moment, both in the informal sector and the formal sector, is 17.5 million people. Only 3.5 of those have a pension of some sort. So the other 14 million of Kenyans do not have anything.
The plan allows an individual to build a savings income by making regular contribution in the scheme during their working life.
Financial institutions and private companies should increase the volume of goods bought from small businesses to keep them afloat during and after the COVID-19 pandemic. Secretary in charge of Trade, Betty Kiptum, was noted that restructuring of SME loans will only support businesses. Let's listen into that.
Coronavirus has occasioned financial institutions to restructure their loan books, as most borrowers were reeling from the effects of measures taken to curb the spread of the virus. Stanbic Bank says it has restructured loans worth 38 billion shillings.
The help has been in 2 parts. Part 1 was to give an initial moratorium, which was to allow them to have a repayment holiday. Then the second phase, where we are now, is to now reorganize the loans and give them reduced repayments and help them.
Second-hand clothes dealers form the largest percentage of customers who renegotiated their loans after a ban in importation of mitumba was effected in April.
Some of our SMEs in Gikomba who import the bales of clothes, once the freeze was there, they could not repay their loans. So we allowed them a time not to repay their loans. Now that the freeze has opened up and they are now able to import, we are now discussing with them to say as their businesses grows kidogo kidogo, we also now help them also repay their loans kidogo kidogo.
However, Industrialization and Trade Cabinet Secretary Betty Kiptum says loan restructuring alone will not help startups stay afloat, but financial institutions and the private sector should consider procuring their supplies from local small businesses.
What we've done is recognizing that in a shock like this, we will lose jobs, but the important thing is to minimize jobs, and therefore that's why the country never closed down completely. We just wanted to make sure that businesses can operate as much as possible within this restriction.
She says the government will buy more locally manufactured goods urging SMEs to make quality products to attract more customers.
Consistent journey requires both the inputs from government or from the banks, but also the inputs from the entrepreneur. Because nobody can just hold your hand if you're not willing to grow. So
the government availed 5 billion shillings in a stimulus for businesses, with the Trade Ministry saying it will give a breakdown of how the money was disbursed in due course. Benson Riopa reporting for Channel 1 Business.
Let's play now. The Football Kenya Federation General Election, set for the 17th of next month, may not be held as planned after a group, Kenya Football Stakeholders, wrote a letter to the sports registrar seeking to stop the elections. In a letter addressed to the registrar of sports, the group says that the current office has no mandate to hold elections since its term in office had expired last November. The group said that the office is non-compliant with the Sports Act, hence the constitution is not registered by the registrar of sports. This comes a few days after 4 aspirants of the presidential seat, Sam Nyamweya, Twaham Barak, Nicholas Musonye and Sami Shole, did not hand in their nomination papers to the Electoral Board as required after they cited several irregularities heading into the election exercise. Internationally, Britain's tennis top cream Kyle Edmund lost to US Open top seed Novak Djokovic, while compatriot Cameron Norrie advanced to the 3rd round of a Grand Slam for the first time last night. Edmund won the first set but ultimately struggled to keep up with the world #1's intensity. The 33-year-old maintained the level that has helped him stay unbeaten. It is on that sporty note that we close lunchtime news this particular afternoon. Many thanks for your company and for watching. My name is Betty Kiptum. Byron Abuli has been my colleague on the sign language interpretation. Have yourself a lovely afternoon.